Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this evening. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We'll allow others to get on after the workday, but thanks for coming. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes, but thanks for coming tonight. Hang tight. Okay, everyone, good evening. We're going to get started now. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Amy Salata, and I am the Outreach and Advocacy Manager at the Student Borrower Protection Center. And tonight we'll be doing a webinar on paths to student debt cancellation. A little bit of background on the Student Borrower Protection Center for those of you who might not know. We're a national nonprofit policy organization focused solely on alleviating the burden of student debt in the country. And we do this through a mixture of policy, policy making, advocacy, and litigation strategy to rein in industry abuses, protect borrowers' rights, and advance economic opportunity for the next generation of students. I'm really excited to speak with you this evening. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your webinar screen, and I'll answer as many as I can at the end of the webinar. So let's see. So tonight we're going to be spending the next, for however long, laying out different options for student debt cancellation. This includes updates to the cancellation proposal that President Biden announced in August, the income-driven repayment account adjustment, or the IDR account adjustment, and public service loan forgiveness. We'll also have plenty of time for Q&A at the end of the presentation, and so if you have questions on other topics, I can answer them as best as I can. So first, let's begin by reviewing the plan that President Biden announced in August. So this past August, in recognition of the harmful economic impacts of the student debt crisis, President Biden announced a broad-based student debt relief plan for federal student loan borrowers who meet certain income requirements. The plan would provide up to $20,000 in debt cancellation for borrowers who had previously used a Pell Grant to pay for their schooling at any point in their educational career, and then they also have to meet certain income requirements. The plan would also cancel up to $10,000 for borrowers who did not receive a Pell Grant to pay for college, but they also meet certain income requirements. To be eligible, borrowers must have earned under $125,000 as an individual or under $250,000 as a married couple or head of household in either the 2020 or 2021 tax year. For the majority of borrowers, an application process will be required, and borrowers will have until December 31st, 2023 to apply. For borrowers who already have shared income information with the Department of Education through, enrollment in an income-driven repayment plan, perhaps, they may be eligible for cancellation on an automatic basis. And as part of this announcement, the administration also extended the payment pause through December 31st of this year, which we know has already been extended to next summer, which I can go over at the end if you'd like. And then also proposed an income-driven repayment plan that will drastically lower monthly payments. I will say that this IDR proposal is very much still a proposal. We are still waiting on final updates, so stay tuned for more information on that front. Ooh, my cursor's not working. Okay. This debt relief plan was an historic and exciting opportunity for folks, so much so that 26 million people applied in the last few months, and 16 million borrowers are already approved for cancellation and are waiting in a queue. As you may already know, a federal judge in Texas and a panel of judges in Missouri blocked President Biden's student debt relief plan in mid-November. And while the Department of Justice is appealing the decision, the Department of Education no longer is accepting applications at this time. Although the debt relief program is blocked for now, we are confident that the Biden administration will find a way to get debt relief across the finish line for folks. So what's next? So here's a list of things that you can do based on whether or not you've already applied for debt relief. If you have already applied, you should have received a confirmation email, so check to make sure that you received that. The department will keep all applications on file as the DOJ appeals, and unless you hear from Ed requesting further information, you do not need to do anything further right now. Make sure that your contact information is up to date with the Department of Education and with your servicer. And then all approved applicants will be notified via email. So stay up to date with, and you can also stay up to date with Ed at ed.gov/subscriptions. You can sign up there and you'll receive, regular updates on anything that happens with the plan as it moves along. If you haven't applied yet, you can also sign up for those subscriptions. That would be a good idea. And you can also make sure that you have qualifying loans and find out if you've ever received a Pell Grant to pay for your education, which will determine whether or not you're eligible for the $10,000 or the $20,000 in debt relief. Okay, now let's turn to the loans that are eligible for broad-based cancellation. So as you'll remember, borrowers must earn below a certain income and also must have qualifying federal loans held by the Department of Education in order to be eligible for relief. So these include all federal direct loans. These can be subsidized, unsubsidized, Parent Plus loans, which are loans that parents take out to help their children attend college, Graduate Plus loans, so loans that you take out for a graduate education, and then also direct consolidation loans. Other loans that are also held by the federal government, which are also eligible, specifically FFEL loans that are held by the Department of Education, and then Perkins loans that are also held by the Department of Education. Additional loans also include all defaulted loans held by the Department of Education or commercially serviced loans, including defaulted subsidized Stafford or unsubsidized Stafford, defaulted Parent Plus or Graduate Plus, and defaulted Ed-held Perkins loans. A helpful tip to determine whether your loans qualify. If you had loans that were paused over the course of the payment pause due to the pandemic, your loans are eligible for the cancellation program. Now, as you can see from the red text at the bottom of the screen, as of September 29th, the administration announced that any privately owned FFEL or Perkins loans, which are not held by the Department of Education, are not eligible for relief under this broad-based cancellation program. So any borrower who consolidated commercially held FFEL or Perkins loans prior to September 29th, you are fine, but any new consolidations after the date of September 29th will not be eligible. So some of you may be thinking, how do I even tell what type of loan I have to begin with? So don't worry, we're gonna go over this in the presentation. And I'm also happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation as well. Okay, here we go. As I mentioned on the previous slide, FFEL loans that are held by the Department of Education are eligible for debt relief. And if you have a commercially held FFEL loan, that will not be eligible for cancellation. One way to tell is that commercially held FFEL loans have not been receiving the payment pause while the ones that are held by the Department of Education have been receiving it. Another way to find out is to log into studentaid.gov and view your dashboard. Once you're there, you'll be able to see if your loan is held by a private lender, such as a bank, or if the lender is listed as the Department of Education. So finding out this information will enable you to tell if you're eligible for the debt relief plan that was announced in August. In response to the court's blocking of student debt relief, we're calling on the president to cancel student debt using all available legal tools. And as I mentioned, the president still has the authority to cancel student debt. You can send a letter to the president calling on him to cancel student debt at our Action Network page that is listed here. And this will also be sent in a follow-up email tomorrow to anyone who registered for this event, along with a recording of this presentation. So now we're going to switch gears to talk a little bit about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which is another way to get your debt canceled. And the Department of Education has relaxed some of the requirements of the program, so you may be able to benefit from some of these changes. First, let's talk about how the program was created and how it functioned for most of the time that it existed. So Congress created the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program in 2007 to help public service workers who were struggling with their student loan debt, but also to make sure that future students and graduates wouldn't be deterred from entering the public service because of their student loan balances. And to put it simply, PSLF is the promise that if a borrower works in public service for 10 years and makes payments on their loans during that time, the remainder of their debts will be forgiven. Okay, so typically there are 4 specific requirements for the program. First, you need to have a direct loan. That's one of several federal loan types. If you have a FFELP or a Perkins loan, you are able to consolidate those loans into direct loans to make them eligible for PSLF, but the only direct loans are eligible for PSLF. Second, you need to be in the correct repayment plan, which for the program is generally an income-driven repayment plan, or an IDR plan, as I've been calling them. Third, you also need to work full-time in the public service field, which could be a local, state, federal, or tribal government, a 501c3 nonprofit, or certain other nonprofits, depending on the work that they do. Finally, you need to make 120 qualifying payments, or 10 years worth of payments on your loans, while also meeting all of the other requirements. There have been some impacts of COVID on the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. The most relevant is that for those loans that are getting the payment pause, those that are owned by the federal government, every month of suspended payments counts towards PSLF loan forgiveness, towards the 120 total payments that you need. However, you still need to meet each of the other criteria, and the most relevant criteria is working for the public service employer still. So there are certain requirements that the Department of Education has waived for a limited time, and we're going to review those now. Essentially, the relaxation of some of these requirements gives public service workers credit towards loan forgiveness, regardless of what type of federal student loan they have, for any period of time since October 1st, 2007, when the program began, and as long as they were in qualifying public service employment and their loan wasn't in default, deferment, or forbearance. So even for months in which borrowers didn't actively make a payment, as long as their loan was in repayment status, they can receive credit. And these credits are retroactive. So borrowers can receive credit for past payments that were previously ineligible. So in short, for any months that a borrower had any type of federal loan, worked for a qualifying public service employer, and wasn't in default, deferment, or forbearance, that borrower can receive credit towards the 120 months required for loan forgiveness under PSLF. In a few slides, I'll also talk about how borrowers may be able to receive some credit for time that they spent in deferment or forbearance to get that time to count towards PSLF as well. One thing to note is that these extended benefits are not completely automatic. So normally PSLF requires that borrowers have a specific loan type, a direct loan, as I mentioned. And although the waiver although this time period in time allows borrowers with any loan type to get credit, those without direct loans must take some steps to convert their loans into direct loans through a process called consolidation, though you still will get time and credit for time before the conversion of that loan. And almost all borrowers, regardless of loan types, will have to certify with the Department of Education any periods of qualifying public service work that they've had since October 1st of 2007, Importantly, borrowers who need to consolidate their loans into direct loans must do so before May 1st, 2023, in order to take advantage of the time-sensitive requirements that have been waived with the program. If you haven't done so already, borrowers should also submit PSLF forms for all of their qualifying work that they've had since October 1st, 2007, but this can be completed at any time. The important deadline here is the deadline to consolidate your loans if you don't have direct loans before this May 1st deadline. If you're interested in the PSLF program and want more information, we have webinars specifically geared towards PSLF that break down the steps borrowers need to take in much more detail. Some of them are available at our YouTube page. Also, you could check out our protectborrowers.org/events for more upcoming events. And then we also have a website, which I'll mention at the end, but it's called cancelmystudentdebt.org. Feel free to visit it right now. It's got really great resources on PSLF, on the cancellation announcement, on the IDR account adjustment, which I'm going to go through next, and some FAQs and some shorter videos. So it's a really great resource if you're looking for more detail on any of these programs. So now let's talk about another option for having your student debt canceled, the income-driven repayment plans. So under the law, income-driven repayment entitles borrowers to a range of plans that set their monthly payment as an affordable % of their income and offer cancellation after 20 or 25 years in repayment. However, a well-documented history shows that student loan servicers regularly steer borrowers away from these plans and have widely failed to track borrowers' progress towards promised cancellation. In April of 2022, this past April, the Department of Education announced a one-time account adjustment meant to address these historical breakdowns. So for public service workers with student debt, this initiative mirrors the same benefits and protections that have delivered debt relief to public service workers across the country. And these benefits include credit towards both PSLF and debt cancellation under IDR in a few circumstances. So how does this account adjustment actually work? This account adjustment provides a pathway to debt cancellation via consolidation for borrowers with older federally guaranteed loans, also known as Federal Family Education Loan Program loans, or FELP loans. It also provides debt cancellation for any monthly payments made, regardless of what payment plan was selected, and regardless of whether they were made on time, in advance, or late. It also provides credit towards debt cancellation for any member of the military for any period of active duty military service, including periods of forbearance and deferment. And then in addition to it providing borrowers working in public service with the same opportunity to gain credit towards PSLF, the IDR account adjustment also offers all borrowers, including public service workers, an additional set of protections. You can get credit towards debt cancellation for extended periods of forbearance and certain deferments. So if you've had up to 12 consecutive months of forbearance or over 36 cumulative months of forbearance, you can get credit for that time. And then any deferment that happened prior to the year 2013, with the exception of in-school deferment. It had to have been a deferment outside of in-school deferment. You could also get credit towards debt cancellation for any borrowers who were steered into forbearance due to misrepresentations by a student loan company. And to do that, you'll need to file a complaint with the Federal Student Aid Ombudsperson. So how do you take part in this IDR account adjustment? For most borrowers, the adjustment will be automatic. However, if you have loans that are not currently held by the Department of Education, such as commercially held FEL, or Perkins loans, they will need to be consolidated before May 1st in order to have the adjustment applied to your account. The timeline for this account to be applied depends on how close you are to the 20 or 25 years needed for cancellation. So if you've been in repayment for 20 or 25 years, the Department of Education has stated that they will begin adjusting accounts this November. I know that it's already December, but those accounts will happen first. So if you've been in repayment for 20 or 25 years, those accounts will be adjusted first. And then if you haven't been in repayment that long, all other accounts will be adjusted in July of 2023. This is the timeline that they've set for this. I want to mention here again that there was this recent change to the cancellation announcement from President Biden. So as of September 29th, borrowers with commercial FFEL or Perkins loans held by an institution are no longer eligible for cancellation under the debt relief announcement from August. All borrowers who consolidated prior to this date of September 29th don't need to worry about this. And if you have a mixture of loans that received the payment pause and some that did not receive the payment pause, consolidating all of those loans together could affect your eligibility for the cancellation of $10,000 or $20,000 under the recent announcement. There is a lot up in the air right now, especially with the debt relief plan held up in the courts. But we want to mention this here because if and when the application becomes live again for student debt relief, you should understand that consolidating those loans together could make you ineligible for this debt relief plan from President Biden. So thinking through your best options for debt cancellation, you might have to consider how long you've been in repayment and how much debt you have in order to make an informed decision about the best option for you personally. So now let's review how to check what type of loans you have. This can be really confusing and many folks don't necessarily know. So to see all of your federal loans, you should log into your online account at studentaid.gov and you'll have a dashboard there that lists your loans. Any that say direct are direct loans, and any that don't say direct will need to be consolidated if you're seeking PSLF. If you recognize, from one of the first few slides that you have commercial FFEL loans, you know that those need to be consolidated in order to take advantage of the IDR account adjustment. So you can see here that this person already consolidated their loans because they have 2 consolidation loans, and all the loans with a balance say direct. So these are all direct loans. So they don't need to be consolidated again or anything. These are all set for receiving all the 3 things that I mentioned tonight, the debt relief plan from President Biden, the public service loan forgiveness program, if they choose to seek that out, and then also the IDR account adjustment. You can also see that this person had previous loans down the bottom here. So they formerly had Graduate Plus loans and Perkins loans, but they all have $0 in their balance. So we don't need to worry about those. We just need to worry about the ones that have a balance. If you want more granular data, you could also download your aid data from the dashboard as well. And this will give you more detail on your loans. It'll download a text file for you. And from there, you can also tell which loans you might need to consolidate as well. So either one of these ways is a great way to find out what type of loans you have. Now, I'm going to review how to consolidate your loans if you need to. So to consolidate your loans, you'll need to log into studentaid.gov again, hover over Manage Loans, and then click on Consolidate My Loans in the drop-down menu. This is what the consolidation application looks like here. It'll then guide you through the next steps that you need to take, which include selecting the loans that you want to include in the consolidation, confirming the amount and interest rate of the new loan, and then selecting your payment plan and your servicer, and then signing for the loan. Now, here is a tip specific to this moment in time. If you have a mix of older and newer loans, so some that would be closer to the 10 years that you need for forgiveness under PSLF, or closer to the 20 or 25 years needed for forgiveness under IDR plans, if you consolidate all of those loans together, the new loan will be awarded as much credit towards forgiveness or cancellation as your oldest existing loan. So if you consolidate old and new loans, when the consolidated loan is forgiven, the entire amount will be forgiven. This is useful for folks who have older FFEL loans, but also newer direct loans. You might not think to consolidate your direct loans because they already qualify for a number of these programs, but if you do consolidate them, they would be forgiven on the same timeline set by your older loans. And the same is true if you have multiple direct loans from different periods of time and you want to get them on the same timeline set by the oldest loan. Now, remember that for the regular PSLF program, you need to be enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan. There are also other benefits to being in an income-driven repayment plan. Often it's a more affordable payment each month. So when you're consolidating, it's a good idea to select one of the IDR plans as your repayment plan. Some of the names for these plans include income-based repayment, or IBR, income contingent repayment, or ICR, pay and repay. And these payment plans within income-driven repayment are all different. And there is a payment calculator tool that you can choose, and that can help you choose the best plan among these that's right for you. So before we review important takeaways from today's presentation and get to your questions, I want to just plug our website, cancelmystudentdebt.org, that I mentioned during the presentation. This website that we have built with some of our other partners. It features step-by-step guides, recordings from previous webinars, and then also lists of FAQs on cancellation and PSLF. So check it out. This will also be sent in a follow-up email tomorrow to all those who registered today. So now let's go over some important takeaways and then we can get to your questions. So keep in mind that you can explore all of these options that I mentioned today on the call for cancellation of student debt. These are separate programs and you can pursue all of them. You know, PSLF and the IDR account adjustment interact a bit, but you know, you can apply for cancellation under the debt relief plan from President Biden and also pursue PSLF at the same time. So you don't need to apply for just one. So review all of your options and then you can make an informed decision about what the best option is for you or which best options are for you. And then to do that, determine what type of loans you have. You know, you want to be looking for whether or not you have direct loans so that you can apply for the PSLF program. Whether or not your FFEL loans, if you have them, are commercially held or if they're held by the Department of Education, so that you can know if you need to consolidate them before that May 1st deadline. So remember that deadline for cancellation is May 1st. And then if you have any issues while you're doing any of these things, please file complaints. They help build policy for the future. And there are 3 options for filing complaints. One is you can complain to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Another one is you can complain to the Federal Student Aid Ombudsperson within the Department of Education, or you could, some states also have state ombudspersons for student loan issues at the state level. And so you could also complain with your state student loan ombudsperson if you have one. We keep a list of those on our website, and I'll also be sending those out tomorrow in a follow-up email as well. Okay, finally, beware of scams because there are a lot of moving pieces to the student loan system right now, as you can see. And there are a lot of people looking to take advantage of that. So make sure you're getting your information from a trusted source, you know, specifically ed.gov or studentaid.gov or our website. And so just be very, very mindful about where you're getting your information. Okay, I know that was a lot of information. So let's get to your questions. Let me see what we have here in our Q&A feature. Okay, so the first question that was about pursuing PSLF and also the $10,000 announcement for cancellation. So yes, you absolutely can pursue both of them at the same time. You know, now you know that, or maybe you already knew that the cancellation announcement is held up in the courts. We're hoping that that goes our way and that this application can become live again, or that, you know, the Biden administration will figure out a way to get this across the finish line. But absolutely, you can stay on track for PSLF as well. You know, that looks like making sure that you have direct loans, making sure that you're in an income-driven repayment plan, certifying your employment with the Department of Education. So, and please check out our resources at cancelmystudentaid.org because, cancelmystudentdebt.org because I think they'll be really useful for you there. Okay. Okay, so the next question is about the debt relief plan that President Biden announced. So they're asking if anyone has debt related to a law degree or a graduate degree, can you apply as well? So if you're talking about President Biden's debt relief plan for the $10,000 or $20,000, yes, you can absolutely apply. And you know, if you have just debt from a law degree or a graduate degree, it doesn't matter whether it's undergraduate or graduate degree. Okay, so here's another point that someone's making, which is a really good point, which I often hear a lot, which is very concerning. So they're saying that some of their coworkers in the public sector seem to be assuming that you can't get both Biden's plan for $10,000 cancellation and PSLF. This is untrue. You can absolutely pursue both, and there are benefits to pursuing both, right? So say cancellation becomes a reality again very soon. You could get that $10,000 on your debt or $20,000 on your debt canceled and have more affordable monthly payments perhaps, and then also continue pursuing PSLF to get the remainder of your debt canceled. So yes, please help spread the word that these are two separate programs. The debt relief plan is currently held up in the courts, but PSLF is not. PSLF is still happening right now, and there are serious benefits to applying for PSLF right now, and making sure you're on track and consolidating by May 1st. So please help me spread the word. Okay, there's another question about the deadline to consolidate and get the requirement waivers was October 31st of this year. So that's correct. There was a special waiver that was time limited for the PSLF program that lasted from October of 2020 of 2021 to October 31st of 2022. There was a special waiver for this. However, while the waiver wasn't extended, essentially some of these two these two requirements are relaxed still. And that is, being in an income-driven repayment plan and having a direct loan. And so through the IDR account adjustment, which I mentioned, that is essentially how you can still get PSLF credit, and it works very similarly to the way that the waiver worked. The difference is that under the waiver, you could have been retired, and as of right now, you still need to be working. So that is one of the main differences between the waiver period and right now. But essentially those two pieces are still relaxed. And so you can get that past credit towards PSLF forgiveness if you consolidate before May 1st, and then submit your PSLF forms after that. Okay, we're getting a question about default. What should one do if their account is in default? This is a great question. Okay. So typically there are two options for people who have their loans in default. They are that you can consolidate out of default to be put back into good standing, or you can rehabilitate your loans and be put into back into good standing or back into repayment status. Consolidation is often an easier route for people. However, right now, the Department of Education also in April announced an operation called Operation Fresh Start. And so essentially, they're going to be taking borrowers' loans out of default and putting them back into good standing without having to use one of those two options that I just mentioned, the consolidation or the rehabilitation. So essentially, they're giving you a free pass to get your loans back on track. There are two ways that you can take part in this. You could either request Title IV aid at an eligible institution, or you could communicate with the default resolution group and ask that your loans be put into an account with a non-default servicer, like Nelnet or another servicer that is not operating in the default realm. So those are the two ways that you can get out of, that you can utilize Fresh Start. Now, the deadline for Fresh Start is a year after the payment pause ends. We've been told that the Department of Education will be notifying borrowers sometime this winter on their options for getting out of default under Fresh Start. And so you haven't missed a communication per se, but I do know that the piece on Title IV aid has already been in place. And so if you are looking to go back to school and you've been in default, you can request Title IV aid right now in order to get out of default. And then, when you do that, when you ask for Title IV aid at an eligible institution, the institution will just get a signed statement from you saying that that your student loans will be going back to a non-default servicer. Okay, that was a great question though, because there's another change happening right now. Okay, so someone else is just saying that they certify their employment every year for PSLF, and that they sent it in September, and they haven't updated my payment count as of today. So that's very common, unfortunately, right now, because the waiver was happening from October to October. Many people were, there's a huge backlog, right? And so many people were kind of seeing these things be delayed. And so, I would imagine that, I know the timeline around the PSLF waiver was people were waiting about 4 months or so. And I know that the influx of borrowers submitting paperwork for PSLF towards the end of the waiver just kept growing. And so I imagine there might be quite a backlog right now. So there's no direct timeline for when you might receive notice on the PSLF program, or when your certified employment has been accepted. Okay, someone is asking a question about income driven repayment plans. So I just want to review those 4 plans I mentioned that are income driven repayment plans, or IDR plans. One is income contingent income contingent repayment, or ICR, income based repayment, or IBR, pay, which is PAYE, or pay as you earn, and then repay, which is revised pay as you earn. So all 4 of those plans fall under IDR plans. And under the IDR account adjustment, it doesn't matter which plan you've been in historically, but in order for your debt to get canceled after 20 or 25 years, you'll need to eventually be in an income-driven repayment plan. So it's a good idea to make sure that you're on one, and you can contact your servicer. You can go on studentaid.gov and request one. So there are different ways to get on them, but it's one of those 4 plans that I mentioned. That was a great question. Okay, so someone's saying that they consolidated all of my loans. I received a letter from AidVantage on November 5th. I'm confused what to do next for PSLF. Okay, so I'm going to assume that this person was pursuing PSLF, and they consolidated their loans into direct loans in order to take advantage of the program. So I want to mention that, yes, okay, so consolidating your loans was the first step because you need a direct loan in order to take advantage of the PSLF program, right? The next step would be to submit a PSLF form to certify your employment with the Department of Education. And so you can go to studentaid.gov, and you want to look for the PSLF help tool in order to fill that out. And then it'll generate a form for you based on your past employment. You'll need as many kind of pages to that form as you've had employers for the past however many years that you've been in public service since October 1st, 2007. So you'll need to certify your employment with the Department of Education. That's the next step if you've already consolidated your loans. At that point, your loans will be transferred to a company called MOHELA. So MOHELA is the exclusive public service loan forgiveness student loan servicer. And so, a good way to know if you're on track is that you have MOHELA as your servicer. And then, once you have MOHELA as your servicer, you'll be able to tell kind of the count on how many months you have towards forgiveness once your loans are transferred and you have an account set up with them. So yes, the next step is certifying your employment with the Department of Education. Okay, if you need more information, I would check out our resources. I'll also email everyone tomorrow with more information. Unfortunately, we don't have the capacity. We're a very small team. We don't have the capacity to do one-on-one consultations with people. But I do promise you that the cancelmystudentdebt.org website does have a lot of information. I know it's a lot to grasp, but that way you could get it in your own time and review it and watch some of these shorter videos that might be more digestible as well. Okay. Someone's asking about income-driven repayment plans again. You can allow the lender pick which IDR plan they give you based on the lowest payment. You should be able to choose which IDR plan you can go on. And as I mentioned, there's a repayment calculator tool that can help you choose which is best for you. It's possible that people might not be eligible for all 4 of those plans. So for instance, if you have Parent Plus loans, Parent Plus loans are generally eligible for public service loan forgiveness. However, they were excluded from that waiver period that I mentioned. And also, in order to take advantage of PSLF, they need to consolidate their loans because they don't have access to the IDR plans. And so when they consolidate, they can gain access to the IDR plans, but I believe that the only one they are eligible for is the income-driven repayment, or the income contingent repayment plan, the ICR plan. So it's possible that you might log in and not be able to access some of the plans, but you should be able to choose from the options that are available to you for the best one, the one that gives you the lowest monthly payment when you choose to do that. And again, you can call your servicer. You can go to studentaid.gov and request that. Or when you're consolidating, if you need to, that's an option, when you're consolidating. You'll have to choose which income-driven or which payment plan you want to be on. And, I mentioned the benefits of the IDR plans, and so that's often a good option for people. Okay, I think that's all of the questions that we've had so far. I'll just give it, another 30 seconds or so. But if no one has other questions, then I think this is the end of our time. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining this evening for our last webinar of the year. We will be having monthly webinars next year on both this webinar, the Paths to Cancellation webinar, and also on navigating debt relief for FFELP borrowers, given that there's so many complications and certain steps that FFELP borrowers need to take, mainly consolidating before that May 1st deadline. But so please check out our events page if you'd like to attend another one. I'll be sending out resources tomorrow along with a recording. And thank you again for joining us tonight. It was a good time, and thanks for all your questions and your attention. Okay, have a great holiday season, and we'll see you in the new year.